What was your first studio job then? What was your first? How did you end up being in a studio?
Well, I'd been in the studio many times as a musician.
You a guitarist?
Yeah. I started as a drummer, but I was hopeless. I just don't have the stamina for it. So I quit and became a guitarist.
Right. And this was pretty heavy rock kind of stuff? Or?
No, this was more punk, really.
Right.
That was my first love.
Yeah.
Because it was the easiest to play. The guitarist from the drummer I was a band in, he came around my house and said, I want you to be in my new band. I said, I'm not playing anymore, I've had it with drums. He said, well, I want you to be the guitarist. I said, I can't play guitar. And he said, look, do this, and do this. Can you do that? 3 chords. Yeah, that seems easy enough. He said, right, you're in.
Cool.
And 2 weeks later we were off on tour.
Right.
But yeah, I'd been in the studio loads of times to record and was always interested in it.
And that was in local places to hear, was it?
Yeah. There was a great guy called Alan Cave, I think it was. Alan something.
In Birmingham?
No, from Burton Latimer. He had a 8-track in his shed in his back garden, and he moved it up to 16-track, and he taught me loads.
Right.
The basics of it.
Oh, right.
But then I bought a PA for our band and had to learn how to use all that.
Yeah.
And ended up doing sound for other bands who were playing with us. Then I got asked to go on tour with a band who I'd done sound for. And I was like, wow, what, you mean like professionally? Like you get paid for it and everything? Yeah. And then they were doing some demos for their second album. And they said, can you come to the studio and help us out with the demos?
Right.
I said, yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Did you have a proper job that you had to sort of jack in to do all this stuff?
No, I've never had a job. The only other work I've ever done was, the only other thing I can do apart from music in life is art.
Right.
And I was a graphic designer.
Oh, right, yeah.
I wanted to do album covers.
Yeah.
No, but you can never make any money out of doing album covers. So I ended up the freelance graphic artist doing really, really dull work.
I see.
Instruction leaflets and double glazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a difficult decision to go on tour or anything.
No, it was always just to fill in the gaps in between music.
Yeah.
And we went to the studio to record the demos, and I was expecting there to be an in-house engineer. And there wasn't.
Right.
It was just a studio. Oh shit! All right, guys, go and set up in the live room. I've got a couple of things to do in here. I just shut the door and went, oh, what am I gonna do? We just winged it, just
worked it all out.
blagged it, and I've been blagging it ever since.
You'd obviously worked out some of the knobs from your live.
Yeah, I knew the basics.
Your man Alan with his shed, so you probably got a few ideas. Yeah.
I know. I had a good mate who was a studio engineer, and I phoned him up and just went, look, you got to talk me through it on the phone. Yeah. And he said, can you plug a mic in, get it
on
to
tape? Was this on analog
24 track,
16 track, right? Oh wow, right.
What was X? No, was it 24 track 1 inch? Yes, it was. Yeah,
Tascam or something.
Tascam,
I used to have one of those. Jolly good.
Yeah,
and completely
bluffed it. And the record company loved the demos, and the management loved the demos, and they said, can you do some more work for us? So it just carried on from there, really. And it was all just word of mouth and snowball effect.
Yeah. And you've sort of ended up doing all this, a lot of your work presumably still is this fairly heavy end of things, the sort of...
Yes.
The darker metal stuff.
Yes. I was doing a lot of lighter, sort of indie rock based stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd had a really bad experience with a band and was feeling pretty down about the whole business, really. And I said to my manager, Rudy, at the time, I said, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just not enjoying it. Whinging indie bastards. And I said I want to do something completely different. And about a week later he called me and he said, do you fancy working with Napalm Death? I said, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And I didn't have a lot of experience of quite such extreme music as that. I mean, that is about as far as you can go.
Yeah.
But I just loved it straight away and got on really well with the guys. And,
So how long? What year would this have been then?
That
Roughly?
was 99, I think.
Yeah, about 10 years ago then. So yeah. So you had a manager at this time, and you were obviously carving yourself a fairly good
He was
career.
a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
We'd been to college together.
Right.
And he got into music management and producer management.
Yeah.
He was managing another producer, Simon Effamy,
Mhm.
who'd done a lot of Paradise Lost stuff, and I started working with Simon.
Yeah.
We were a partnership
I see.
for about 5-6 years.
Right.
I started as his assistant, worked up to engineer, and then we became co-producers.
Right.
Yeah, and he taught me a hell of a lot.
Yeah. So how did you cope with Napalm Death? Because they got a fairly defined sound
Yes.
and a way of working, presumably that they've been doing for years. I didn't even know they were still going. It was amazing to sort of.
No, well, they've kind of been on and off the map, really.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're much bigger outside of this country.
Right. Europe, I imagine.
South America.
Okay.
For some reason, Spanish-speaking countries just love that kind of music.
Yeah.
They do really well,
Yeah,
really well abroad. But yeah, they've got very, very defined ideas about what they want to do. It's not like I can exactly teach them much about their style of music, but I brought a lot of other influences from all the other kinds of music that I've worked on. And they were totally up for it.
Yeah.
Trying new ideas and different things, and especially on the last few albums that we've done. I mean, nobody ever expected female backing vocals, acoustic guitars, and strings and trumpets on a Napalm Death album.
Right.
But we're pulling all the
But I
tricks
imagine it
out.
still sounds pretty.
Oh
rocking.
yes, it's a face melter.
Yeah. And they make a living out of it then, do they? So they sell enough records to.
Yep, they work their asses off.
Yeah.
They work really hard.
So they're touring abroad a lot then.
Constantly.
Right.
Yeah, they all work really hard, and they're all in other bands. Particularly the guitarist and the bass player. They're always in about 6 bands at a time,
right.
and they've always got studio projects on the go.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, they work really
And how's that
hard.
financed, Napalm Death? And have they got a label that looks after
They've
them, or
they've
do it
had
themselves?
several deals with several labels. At the moment, they're on Century Media Records, but a lot of the operation they look after themselves. I mean, they're so experienced in the industry.
No doubt, yeah.
They do take care of themselves,
Mm.
and just simply by touring all the time and working really hard, they do earn.
And is that true of a lot? Always, I mean, I just went through your CV and listened to a few things I could find on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. There's a lot in a similar sort of vein that on the last sort of 10 things on your allmusic.com. Like I listened to Rossi's and Raging Speedhorn and the Berserker, and they're all of that kind of similar sort of genre. And presumably, do they make it pay? They got record label budgets and things to make records.
To varying degrees.
Yeah. Because there's a whole subculture that
Yeah.
most people who watch X Factor and wouldn't even
No,
be aware of.
no, exactly.
These days.
I still get asked by parents and family, oh, who are you working with? Are we going to see them on the telly? No, probably not. But yeah, there is a huge subculture, particularly abroad.
Right.
And as long as a band is active and willing to put the hard work in, they can make a good living out of it.
And how much computer fiddling goes on these days with, if the musicians aren't quite up to it?
Varying degrees. From I'd say it varies from none to lots.
Are you a beat detective wizard?
I do use Beat Detective, although I still, even though it takes longer, I still prefer to do it just manually, by eye, just chop it up and look.
Move a few bits
Yeah,
around.
because I was a drummer,
Yeah.
I can feel where the beat's going. I don't like to lay everything on a grid.
Right.
It isn't natural.
So you'll just drag things a bit left or right
I'll
to
just
make them feel
it,
better?
yeah.
I see. Just the odd beat or a couple of beats?
Yeah, or sometimes
Or lots
more.
of it, yeah. But if you're not doing, presumably if you're doing a lot more, then you're going to be looking at the grid, aren't you? Or you're going to be...
Well, no, because sometimes it's not...
It's done freestyle.
Yeah,
and
sometimes
you're just
it's not to
evening
a
it out a
click.
bit.
Yeah, I'll just go, okay, here's the start of the bar, here's the end of that 4 bars, let's just even everything out in between that point and that point.
I see.
But yeah, sometimes just turn the grid off and just look at the drums.
And presumably you've got to do that before you then get into any serious overdubbing. So,
Yeah.
So you have to chuck the band out into the car park and get on with it.
Yeah, some drummers like to sit
Yeah.
and watch and say, "Oh, can we just try this?" And can we, you know, some don't want to know. Some are just like, "Yeah, get on with it."
And do you find it a problem to broach the subject to some drummers that you're going to do that, or is it a diplomatic issue?
I think most people know these days that there is a certain amount of that goes on in any kind of music.
Yeah.
You know.
But do you assume that knowledge when you have a drummer, or do you sort of say, "Excuse me, do you mind if I rip your performance to pieces"?
Well, no. If
up?
somebody really doesn't want to be manipulated and they really believe that what they've done is perfect, then I'll say, okay, this is what I would like to do with it.
Yeah.
This is what you've done. Which do you prefer? And if I really believe that there should be some manipulation, and once I've presented the argument, here's mine, here's yours, I've never had anybody who didn't agree that it was better. Some people are worried that you're going to turn them into a robot.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be mechanical and on the grid. But I just don't do that.
No, and people know what your records sound like, presumably, when they come to you. And what about doing vocals with these kind of bands? Because you know, most people, you imagine that you do vocals, you comp all this, but you might tune them a bit with Melodyne or presumably, does that all go on as well, or do they shout down a 58 and that's the take, or?
It's different for every band. I mean,
how fussy are they?
With stuff like, well, with Napalm Death, the first time I recorded his vocals, he scared the life out of me. He doesn't like to be in a different room. He likes to be in the control room.
Right.
He likes close communication, which is great. I really like that.
Yeah. Headphones or speakers?
He hates headphones.
Right.
But he likes his iPod.
Oh, right.
Headphones.
Okay. Yeah.
So let him use his own iPod headphones, and he just stands right next to you with a 58. But the first time, okay, right, I'm just going to get a level, and he went, "Wah!" He's so loud, like, unbelievably loud.
You leapt for the pad.
Yes. But no, I mean, there's very little editing goes on with his voice. That's how he puts it down.
Yeah.
We do experiment a lot. There's always a couple of experimental tracks on the album. We've had him singing melodies and harmonies just lately, which was a new experience for him.
Right.
And he really enjoyed it, it. And, you know, layering up a choir of monks. And we had a really good time.
It's funny to think of somebody's had a career in music for that long. It's like singing melodies is quite a novelty. It just seems bizarre, doesn't it? It's like, that's quite a good idea, sing a melody. So you wake up 20 years into your career one day and decide.
No, there is melody in what he does, but
well,
obviously it's in his own style.
Yeah.
But to sing like in a clean tone rather than the.
It's just shouting, right, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, he's got something that very few people have got. You know, it's just the natural raw sound of his voice.
I'd last about 10 seconds trying to do that. His voice would be worn out. He's obviously built up some different vocal cord muscles than most other people. Yes,
very powerful. But with other singers, it's different. You know, with the more rock stuff, where it is clean voice, soaring melodies, whatever. If you need to jump for the auto tune, you know, in places.
With your Napalm Death Man, then, is that 58 into any particular recording chain or just into 1176?
Decent preamp. Just lately.
Is it lots of compression?
Yes. But I'm mad for compression. I really am. You know, other engineers I work with, what are you doing? The needle's bending. Yes. 1176 is my favourite device in the world. If I could pick one piece of gear to always have, it would be that.
Right.
When I first discovered one of them, I was just hallelujah. Yeah.
And what about drum sounds? Because that's again a fairly specific genre-specific thing with those sorts of records.
Yes, although
sort of clicky bass drum, little small high-pitched snare.
My sounds, I'm very adamant that I won't use collections of samples like other people use. I've got my own sample collection if I do use samples.
Yeah.
And I try as much as possible to use as much natural sound.
Mm.
If it needs augmenting with a sample just to get a bit of extra punch, then okay, you know. But I don't like completely replacing. There's too many people doing it. It's too easy to do. People are doing it in their bedrooms and making these very clinical sounding, technical metal records and doing it very well, and it sounds great. But I'm not interested in doing that. I want character and some kind of natural dirt to it.
Yeah, bit of a room sound. So do you mic up in a sort of conventional way as you would any other session, or is there anything specific to those kind of records that would be different?
Not really, apart from putting triggers on the drums, not to record trigger sounds, but just recording the spike output from the trigger.
Right.
I like to do that because it's good for editing. You can see exactly where every beat is really clearly.
I see.
Especially when you're dealing with really fast.
Okay, so you got a trigger that you stick on the drum head.
Stick it on the drum. Just record the output from it, and you just get a little
spike.
dick
Right.
spike.
So what brand are those? What are they?
I use the Roland ones.
Right.
I like those. But they come in really handy if you do need to do any sample replacement. It's really easy to do it from those, and they're also really handy for opening gates.
So it's just like a little voltage spike, is it then?
Yeah. Well, it's a little crystal mic.
Yeah.
But because it's just so tiny and in direct contact, all you hear is that.
Right, and you tape it actually onto the drum head.
It's I've got one right there if you want to see it.
Well,
can I
squeeze
over there?
It's a practical demo. Alright.
That just clips onto the rim of the drum. Screw it down, and then in here, that just pushes against the edge of the skin.
Oh. And does that dampen the drum slightly?
It can do a little bit, which is often a good thing.
Yeah.
Instead of using a dampening ring or moon gel or whatever, just put that on and it will just take that little bit of buoying out of a snare drum.
So that's designed really to be used with an electronic...
With a brain
thing, yeah. Right, I see. Well, never. Well, thank you for showing us that. That's fascinating.
That's quite common practice these days.
So how would you mic up a bass drum then to get that real clicky...
Well, lots of different ways. Surprisingly, the last Napalm record that we used real kick drums on was done with 57.
Yeah.
Just a 57, and it sounded amazing.
Presumably pretty close to the beta head.
Yeah, and it was incredible how much low end came off it.
Yeah.
Only 20-inch kick drums as well.
Right.
And we really weren't expecting to get the full sound out of that, but we just put it up and went, oh my God, listen to that.
And is that with the front head off or through a hole?
No, through a hole. Yeah. I do use the Beta 52s a lot. I really like those. They've almost got my EQ curve built into them.
Right.
It's kind of what I would do with any other mic, and try and get it to sound like that.
Presumably lots of dampening goes on, does it?
Not too much. I still like to be able to get a bit of woof out of it. But yes, obviously with the faster stuff, you can't have an open bass drum with no dampening.
No.
It just turns into a thunderstorm.
Yeah. So you stick your jumper in there and a brick.
Yeah, we'll stick the bass player in there.
Okay. Any other drum techniques or tips that I should know about?
I picked up a really good one at the BBC actually. Did a session at Maida Vale, and I'd seen it done, but I'd never experienced it firsthand.
Right.
And I don't know why I'd never tried it. But the first thing he did was put a coals over the top of the guy's head.
Right.
As close to his head as he could get without him hitting it with the stick.
Yeah.
And I sat in the control room with the guy, and he just rammed it really hard with 1176. And it was like the whole kit sound right there in one mic.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. Right. So I do that all the time now.
What's that Beatles? If you ever see picture of the Beatles. There's always one about here, isn't there, over Ringo? Sort of some like an AKG crappy whatever, just pointing down about here, isn't it?
I tend to use an 87, or just lately I've been using the Rode NTK, the tube one.
Right.
It does it really well.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how much of the sound you can get just from that one mic.
And then do you add overhead mics as well for cymbals?
Yeah, make sure they're equal distance away from the head mic.
Yeah.
And try and
Get your tape measure out.
Yeah.
To the snare drum. Yeah.
Although I'm pretty good at doing it by eye lately. I've been amazed. You measure it after doing it, and you go, no, spot on. Yeah, nice one. But yeah, if you get the balance right between a pair of overheads and the head mic, I call it the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. The spread and how much sound you can get out of those three mics.
I'll be trying that when I get home, Mike. I think. The guitar sounds, amps and miking. I think. Is there a particular way you do that?
Yes, apparently I am a fool, according to a couple of websites and forums.
Don't be a fool.
I've done it many, many ways. I've been doing it with two mics for years. It was generally, mostly, a 57. Always start with a 57 because I know what it's going to sound like. If it doesn't sound right, then there's something wrong with the guitar sound. And you don't need to look any further.
Yeah.
You don't need to experiment for hours with different microphones. If I can't get the 57 sounding good, everything stop. Let's go back to the amp and sort it out. But it used to be 57 and a 421 was my main choice.
Right.
But I fell out with 421s.
Oh dear.
I fell out with them on everything actually. I don't know why.
Gone out of favour.
Just.
So when you were doing that with two mics, would they be pointing at the same speaker, different speakers, different angles?
Generally straight on the dust cap with the 57, and then onto the same dust cap but at an angle.
Right.
With the second mic.
With them quite close together.
Yeah, and make sure they are millimetre matched.
Yeah.
Diaphragm to dust cap.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to pull them backwards and forwards a little bit, but usually that works. But then I've got a new method which came about completely by accident, as all good techniques do, I think. I bought a whole new set of Audix mics for drums. I got a really good deal on a box of all sorts for a drum kit. And I thought, I've never used these on guitars before. I'm going to check out what they're like.
Yeah.
So I set up my 57, and I set up the rest of them around them,
right.
So that I could A/B each one with the 57, and it looked beautiful. It looked like a flower. And so I was muting them on off, checking them out, and I flicked 3 on at once by accident. And the guitarist went, "Oh, that sounds great." I said, "No, it doesn't. It's just louder. You're being fooled because it's louder." He said, "No, it sounds really good." Oh, yeah, whatever. And then I did it again. He said, "No, it really does sound good." I know it seems to sound good, but it's just perceived, because of the extra loudness. And he wouldn't have it. He said, no, it really does sound good. And I sat back and listened, and I went, no, it does actually sound really good. And I went, oh, just for a laugh, let's put them all on. So we put all 5 mics on, and to my complete horror, they were all in phase, and it worked. And it sounded really, really good. And I went, oh no, what have I done? This is going to be a nightmare. So another 10 minutes of just fiddling with the balance between the mics. Some had more low end, some had more high end, different characters in the middles, and a little bit of balancing around. And do you know what? That actually sounds amazing. And we recorded some of each combination from 2 mics up to 5, and then matched the gains so that we could compare them without being fooled.
Right.
And everybody picked the 5 mics. And I was just, no, this can't be right, this can't be right. This is going to be a nightmare, because if one of those mics moves a millimetre, it's going to wreck the whole sound.
Yeah.
So I taped off the whole area around the cab, made sure that everything was as tight as it could be.
Yeah, right.
Nobody was allowed in the room, just everybody stay out until the guitars are finished. And I spent the next, whatever it was, 3-4 days just going, please don't move, don't move.
Yeah.
And it was quite ridiculous. It shouldn't have worked, but it did, and it was amazing. And everybody said, all the fans, the press, everybody said it's the best guitar tone they've ever had. Layered up 2 tracks with a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier and 2 tracks with a PV.
And how far back were the mics from the...
Ooh,
quite close?
Yeah.
So did you not find
inch and a
the
half.
cumulative proximity just made it really bassy? Was that...
No, I mean, that is down to the amp and the cab getting the balance of it right in the first place. Especially with the metal stuff, you know, there's a lot of chugging low end.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that isn't blowing.
Do you filter a
much
bit of that
air.
out generally when you're mixing? Or...
If I'm doing a combination of 2 tracks of one amp and 2 tracks of another, I'll make sure that there's a bit less on one than there is on the other, and kind of work out the balance of how it works. And then just compress the low end separately.
Oh, right. So you do a bit of multiband limiting sort of thing.
Yeah, if necessary.
You use a plug-in for that then, do you?
Yeah. Or the before I had the plugins to do it, I used to use one of those BSS 4-band compressors.
Right.
That was good for it.
So is this a regular thing now? 5 mics on a guitar, or?
Well, the funny thing was, I tried it a second time and thought it must have been a fluke. It's not going to possibly work again. And I set up the 5 mics, different band, different guitar sound.
Right.
Anyway, so maybe it's not going to work anyway. And one of them didn't work, so we ended up with 4 mics.
Right.
And somebody I know, another engineer I know, was passing by, and he came in and he looked and he went, "What on earth are you doing?" I said, I know, it's ridiculous. And he said, "Can I take a picture?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." So he took a picture and he put it up on some forum, and instantly everybody launched into a tirade of abuse. I mean, who is this idiot? That can't possibly work. You know, it's going to sound terrible.
Well, that's okay. You don't, nobody nicks your secrets.